Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Molly Young from the Miami University Alumni Association. As part of the Miami University Alumni Association's webinar series, today we present What's Going On, Updates from the College of Creative Arts. The presenters today are Dean Liz Mullenix and Associate Dean John Weigand. Liz Mullenix has been CCA Dean for 8 years and is also a professor of theater. Prior to her time as dean, Liz was the chair of the Department of Theater for 7 years. Before coming to Miami, Liz was professor at Illinois State University for 11 years and associate dean of their College of Fine Arts. Dean Mullenix is a cultural historian and writes about American performance and politics during the mid-19th century, with an emphasis on race and gender. She is currently a member of the board of directors for the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and the Richmond Shakespeare Festival. John Weigand is professor of architecture and associate dean of the College of Creative Arts. After earning a Master of Architecture from the University of Illinois, he worked professionally as an architect in Chicago and came to Miami early in the 1990s, initially being hired to conceptualize a new BFA degree program in interior design aligned with Miami's BA in architecture. He directed the program until 2006, when he became department chair, a position he held until 2015. John has served on the Council for Interior Design Accreditation National Board of Directors, as well as the American Institute of Architects Ohio Board of Directors and AIA Ohio Foundation. He served as AIA Ohio president in 2018 as well. Welcome to Dean Mullenix and Weigand. Thank you for joining us today. Just to let the audience know, questions were collected during registration, and Liz and John will attempt to address some of those throughout their conversation today. You'll also have the option to ask questions during their presentation by clicking the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. We'll pause to take some of those questions at various points and again at the end. Please note that in the interest of time we have available, we may not get to every question. Today's webinar will last about an hour, and with that, I will turn it over to Liz and John. Welcome.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you, Molly. I will go ahead and start, and we're just going to go back and forth. And again, anxious to take a stab at answering any questions you may have. We were privy to the list of attendees before we jumped on here, and as a 1977 graduate out of the Department of Architecture, I saw several familiar names. Wish I was seeing your faces as well. But we're going to try to talk about a few things. Certainly, what we're seeing with COVID right now, and we're going to talk a little bit about what our past and present looks like, and some of the trends we're seeing for the future. So. Again, as somebody who went through school at Miami a number of years ago, I counted up the years, and I've been part of this College of Creative Arts in one form or another for probably over half of its existence. Our college kicked off back in right around 1930, different times for different departments. And if I could make one conclusion about where we've gone, it was status quo for most of the time that we've been in existence. Most of you will remember us as the School of Fine Arts. I don't know, Liz, maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe not quite that long, changed to the School of Creative Arts.
Right.
To try to incorporate, to try to contemporize and incorporate some of our new programs. And we quickly thereafter changed to the College of Creative Arts, moved from a school to a college.
Right. But John and we were both department chairs together back in the day and have been colleagues for 15 years. And I think, John, when we both started, it was the School of Fine Arts.
Well, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
So we had 4 anchor departments for, again, most of the history of the academic division. Department of Architecture, Department of Art, Department of Music, and Department of Theater. Liz, you want to talk about some of the evolution just under your guidance team?
Yeah, sure. So So when I became dean in 2013, my predecessor, Jim Lentini, who's now a college president, created several task forces about trying to discover interdisciplinary connections. And that has really, that was a wonderful idea, a wonderful charge that Dean Lentini gave. And it has really borne a lot of fruit because we're honestly about twice the size that we were when John and I were department chairs, moving to about 2,000 students as opposed to 1,000 students. And now we've got 5 departments in the College of Creative Arts as opposed to 4. And we have several thriving interdisciplinary programs, which John and I will tell you about. But in addition to that, too, we also have sort of expanded our footprint beyond Oxford's campus, certainly, and we have wonderful partnership with our regional campus colleagues. But we also have increased programming at Luxembourg. So hopefully several of you got to experience the wonder of our campus in Luxembourg. We now have 2 programs that are specifically coming from the College of Creative Arts in Lux. One is an architecture studio, and John can provide more details about that if you have questions. But students go kind of as a cohort. In the fall, they specifically study architecture as a studio, so they don't sort of lose time in their degree program. We partner with an alum, Jim Clems. Am I saying that right, John?
Yep,
is it Clems? Who is a Miami alum, but is also a Luxembourg. He's Luxembourgian, and his firm works with our students. So that's been a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we have a brand new digital innovation workshop that we also run out of the Luxembourg campus, both in the fall and the spring. And we can talk a little bit more about that when we talk about our new department, which is ETBD. Maybe, John, I'll just, since I'm talking a little bit about ETBD, maybe I'll just mention that now. So many of you alums have probably heard of IMS, Interactive Media Studies, which was a class, then a program, then a minor, then a co-major, all founded by Glenn Platt, who is a wonderful professor and colleague of ours in the College of Creative Arts, and he's also a colleague in the business school. And Glenn created this amazing program that has just grown and grown and grown. And in fact, it became so big that 2 years ago, it became a brand new department within the College of Creative Arts. And this is the Department of Emerging Technology in Business and Design. So we call it ETBD. So it's sort of the new IMS. And the reason for that is because it's a highly interdisciplinary degree program where entrepreneurship meets and sort of digital business and tech meets computer science and tech, and then also design. So that is very exciting. That department already has 3 majors, 2 majors in digital technology, and then another major in games and simulation. And then we have minors in digital media marketing. We've got 2 new graduate programs in that department, one in emerging tech and entrepreneurship, and an online 1-year online program. We're really excited to launch that next year. And then another program, which is a partnership with the Department of Sports Leadership and Management. And this is a master's program in esports management. So esports is professional video gaming. And this is another area that grew out of IMS, ETBD, Emerging Tech and Business and Design. And we have curriculum now in esports, and we also have a varsity esports team. And we have an arena a brand new arena actually that's being built in the Armstrong Student Center. So this is I don't know, John, do you know? It's like a $10 billion industry or something. It's very, very popular. So we're really on the cutting edge there with with these new programs that are coming out of ETBD, which has been a partnership with the Farmer School of Business, and that's also a really exciting thing. And also with engineering, with our colleagues in computer science. And John has been very involved in sort of creating a lot of these new initiatives, these new interdisciplinary initiatives, like arts business. John, do you want to talk a little bit about arts business?
Yeah, and if I could just add a couple more comments about ETBD.
Yes, please.
Particularly note our games program that has gone from, well, not being a major to just completely taking off, growing like crazy, high applications. Again, as an older person, I have maybe a harder time understanding this, but the more I learn, it's not, what we might think of as just learning how to design or play video games, but really understanding gaming in a much broader, more liberal arts sense, how gaming is working its way into, our daily lives in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, in terms of like the theory of games, gamification, right? Exactly.
And one other thing I want to underscore, because I think it talks about where we're going, is Liz mentioned one of the new majors is an applied IMS or applied digital major. And the intent of that is that it partners with other majors. So, like an architecture major that I might work with fairly easily piggybacks onto that in double majors. And the beauty of that is digital expertise within a whole variety of Miami majors makes a lot of sense. So, okay, segue to arts business. One of the things that, I think is really a national trend, but we get feedback all the time from our advisory board and others, is that arts graduates need to know something about business, because they may not be singing in the opera, they may be running the opera, they may not be, putting the paintings in the art museum, they may be running the art museum, etc. And we had some of you, if you went to Miami, you may remember we had an arts management minor that a number of years ago was rekindled. It has also taken off. We added what we call at Miami a co-major, and these are I think the fastest growing package of programs at the university right now, and we're currently looking at parlaying that into an arts business major. And that's a longer conversation, but that very much is the trend, and I think a really good fit for Miami's mission.
And I'll just add a footnote to that what John just said, that this has been a really popular program. This just started. We've had a minor in arts management for years, but probably 5 years ago, we hired this wonderful faculty member, Todd Stewart, who is kind of a unicorn. He has an MFA in design, and he also has an MBA. So he's also a business major, or a business person, businessman. And he really came in and created new curriculum and worked very closely with the Farmer School, especially the entrepreneurship faculty, to create these programs. And that, so it's just 4 years old. The co-major has 100 students in the co-major. We've got about 50 students in the minor. And we've got about another 50 students who are taking our thematic sequence, which is part of the Miami plan. So we're really excited that this program, which has, it blends sort of study in arts business with classes from the business school with real arts experiences too. And we're really excited because, a lot of students come to Miami, and Miami's got a great reputation as a business school, and they come to Miami and they want to get into Farmer, and they can't get into Farmer. And so having other options for various passions is a great idea. We think that we're really gonna gain a lot of new students by opening up this new major. And some evidence to that is SLAM that I mentioned before, Sports Leadership and Management, which did the same thing, really, as a business degree, but through a kind of sports lens. And that's been super popular with students. So we're really hoping, to sort of attract a lot of students to Miami to this program that wouldn't normally have come. So we're really excited about that.
Another exciting development some of you may know about, others may not, is our fashion program. And this is really interesting because fashion at Miami was really student driven. We had a very active fashion club that was, I believe, actually started by a couple students out of my home department. And this goes back, I think it's about what, Liz, the 12th, 13th year anniversary. And they ran a really blow away kind of fashion show, linked it heavily to sort of the business of fashion as well as design. But they drove this. They essentially came to us and said, we're doing all this work. Why can we not, get a minor, co-major degree, whatever, in fashion? So about probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, we started this, and it has just been again another huge growth area. And these new areas are what sort of linked to where we started. That we're no longer maybe just fine arts, but a bigger cluster of arts.
Yeah. And if you alumni, if you're ever on campus, you should go check out the fashion studio. It's really, it's on Western campus. It's in kind of the old greenhouse, like science building, right? John Boyd Hall.
Boyd Hall.
And, we've sort of, the second floor of Boyd is now really devoted to the fashion program. And so there's a beautiful design studio, and a textile room, and they've got lots of really, really great technology. But this is really a mix. The degree program is a mix of business classes, merchandising and retailing, and also design. So another really great sort of interdisciplinary partnership with the Farmer School. It's really exciting. And it's got about 200, John, is that right? About 200 students in it?
I think 200 plus.
Yeah.
It's grown very quickly. So.
Yeah.
One other area we wanted to highlight that we had on our list that really underscores this trend of interdisciplinary partnerships is art therapy, connecting the arts to health. And Liz, do you want to run with that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that I love the story of this because we took a page out of Jim Lentini's book and tasked an interdisciplinary group of faculty, staff, students, and alumni a couple of years ago to explore what we might do in terms of both art therapy and music therapy. And this task force created a great report. And it seemed like because of licensure issues, et cetera, and competition in the state, it seemed like art therapy was a better place to start for us. And the reason for that is that there's only one art therapy program in the state of Ohio. It's at Ursuline College in Cleveland. So that's it. So one of the members of that original task force is an alum named Emily Alberry. And Emily is a licensed art therapist at the Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. And so I drove to Indianapolis and met Emily and got to see her incredibly cool job and all the really moving work that she is doing with kids there. And she essentially invented this program because she basically said, licensure for art therapy comes at the master's level, but there's all kinds of things that you need as an undergrad to be able to be ready for that master's degree. And she said, when I was at Miami, she's an alum, when I was at Miami, I sort of created my own program. I took psychology classes, I took some art ed classes, I took, art, studio art, and I kind of cobbled together this program that allowed me to really hit the ground running when she went to the Chicago's Art Institute to get her art therapy master's degree. So we partnered with psychology, art department, and the psychology department to create this a minor and a co-major so that students can have all the requirements ready to go to grad school. And I think that's a pretty unique program. I think we're one of the only, certainly very unique in the state of Ohio. So that has become incredibly popular. I think we have, I don't know how many students, I should have checked that today, but over 100 students in these programs. And Emily has been our adjunct professor, and that's been just a wonderful, wonderful partnership and a wonderful story. So we do expect that we'll continue to do more interdisciplinary work that has to do with health. So yeah, really exciting.
Absolutely.
So just to put a little cap on that, we've grown from 4 original departments to 5, with lots and lots of interdisciplinary richness there. So it's really exciting. I mean, the division is probably twice the size it was when John and I started as administrators. So it's really exciting to us. And I have to say also, our marketing director, Jenny Barton, our incredible faculty recruiters and advisors, Gretchen Radler, Chad Reynolds. I mean, they work very, very hard. And because of their hard work, we've really seen our applications grow significantly in the last several years. I think COVID might impact that a little bit, but we've seen really tremendous growth. So that's exciting.
Yeah. So Molly, we can take a pause there if there are any questions, or we can move on.
Molly, we can't hear you.
Well,
now we can.
Okay, we do have a couple questions. Let me rewind a little bit there. So just quickly, you touched so briefly on architecture. I do have one question about the degree that comes from architecture. Is that a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture? Is it a Bachelor of Architecture? Is it a 5-year program? Can you expand just briefly upon that, John?
Right, sure. That's a nuance of the discipline. We offer, as we have since the early 1970s, what we call 4+2, a pre-professional Bachelor of Arts in Architecture, followed by the master's degree, which is then required for licensure. And in architecture, the Bachelor of Architecture is actually a 5-year degree. That was offered at Miami in the early years. I actually graduated with a 4-year Bachelor of Environmental Design. Some people may remember that. In many ways, a suitable title, but maybe not the best for marketing. So that was switched somewhere, oh goodness, late 1990s, I want to say. Hopefully that answers that.
Excellent. I think that did it justice. Okay, so perhaps a good segue into your next talking points. I have a question here about the looming pandemic and how the performing arts are moving forward, with it still looming even in our near future and for sort of an indefinite amount of time going forward. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, it was just right a year ago tomorrow that Broadway shut down. A year ago tomorrow that Miami switched to remote instruction. I remember the deans were in the room with President Crawford and the provost, and Mike DeWine was on the phone. We were talking about what are the other Ohio publics going to do, and I mean, it was it's crazy to think that was a year ago. But I'll say. The arts industry in general, I mean, obviously has been incredibly impacted by this, right? And but there's really some beautiful things that have happened, and I think that's a theme actually for what we've experienced at Miami. I mean, off-Broadway theaters in New York City, for example, have really pivoted. Right now, you're seeing. Miami, we have a relationship with the Theater for a New Audience, which is an off-Broadway theater in New York City. And I was just looking at their website a couple of weeks ago, and they're streaming. They are doing, for example, most recently, a short play by Samuel Beckett, starring Bill Camp, who many of you will recognize as the janitor, the chess-playing janitor in The Queen's Gambit. And it was directed by Joanne Akalitis, who's an extremely famous theater director, right? And it was just a little 40-minute piece available on their website. You had to, purchase a ticket. In other theater companies, the Atlantic in New York City, for example, has taken many of their actors, and those actors are now giving free classes, 1-hour classes that you can sign up for on their website. Many theaters are doing this. They're bringing back, they're having reunion performances. So they're taking what was a Broadway hit with famous actors. Manhattan Theater Club is doing this right now. Bradley Whitford and 2 other actors are coming together to read again a play that they were in years ago, and then the playwright will zoom in and entertain questions in kind of a Q&A. And so, it's very interesting. I think lots of the arts are sort of trading the intimacy of being in a live space, a concert hall or recital hall or music venue, theater, with that sort of backstage look, right? They get to talk to the playwright. Or I love the Cincinnati Symphony, and they're doing that too, right? The Louis Langray, who's our beloved conductor, will sort of be available, and you can stream a concert, but then he's right there. Audience can ask him questions. So, there's really been a tremendous amount of creativity in the arts industry. Museums have put their exhibits online. Many of them are operating, right? Robert and I went to the Cleveland Art Museum in the fall, felt very safe. They take your temperature on the way in. There's social distancing. So, and we've tried to do a similar thing at Miami. We've really tried to sort of pivot. I mean, imagine the shock of that, right? So a year ago, we're thinking we've got designers and architects and actors and violin professors, and how are we going to possibly put that online? And John and I can give you a few examples of how we've done that, but I'll preface this by saying the faculty have just been absolutely heroic. I mean, they've just been outstanding. They have risen to an unthinkable challenge, and they have just done a tremendous job, so much so that the CCA was the only division where our teaching evaluations for the fall of 2020 actually were higher than our student evaluations for the faculty than in the fall of 2019. So that was a real that was a really good piece of data. It really showed us that we really tried to pivot, and we did that successfully. But a great example of that is what John did in his class. He and I both taught last fall. So
yeah, well, yeah, and it's interesting. I'm not sure we're far enough away from the pandemic to fully decompress on how this is going to change things. But, I was one of those people. We've had online learning around for a long, long time. And, we have our sort of stereotypes about what it entails. But I was one of those people that said, yeah, Miami can do online learning, but not in the arts. As an architect, designer, we need to sit down and critique projects, and
we need to touch things.
Yeah. It's not something that's going to work easily online. Wrong. What we've become just acutely aware of are the numbers of ways that you can deliver a course virtually. We think of the large asynchronous kind of class where there's really no personal contact. But I would say the vast majority of our arts classes, certainly mine, have moved to simply to a high-touch synchronous kind of format. So if I've got 20 students in a class, I will move them into this kind of an environment, and as often as possible do one-on-one sessions, 1-on-5 sessions. I quickly learned how to master annotation tools where, a student can show their work, many different formats. I can draw on it. I can, in fact, almost more fluidly than I could if I was sitting next to them in the studio. So my personal experience is, yeah, it works. Now, what's interesting, just one other quick thought, is as we wind up a year of this now, I'm starting to sense a little bit of sadness about not being in person. I mean, I think that's been there all along, but I think people really do miss the in-person content. So I'm kind of thinking there's going to be a hybrid sort of place in the future, but time will tell.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, and this is something I'm sure all of you guys are experiencing in your regular lives, right? We miss each other. We miss our students. I miss John. I wish I was sitting next to John having this conversation in person and not on Zoom. But there's so many great examples of pivoting. I remember, John, you said to me in the beginning of teaching your class that, in a regular face-to-face class, students can kind of sit in the back row and not, but on Zoom, I mean, they certainly can mute their screen. We tell them to keep it on, but they have to put their work up there, right? For everybody to see. There's discussions about it. I mean, there's ways in which it surprisingly really worked. We had a great example in the art department, Erin Beckloff, who teaches our letterpress studio classes, which is a kind of form of communication design, graphic design. She actually worked with a colleague and designed a press, and then sent kits to all of her students, who then assembled these little printmaking presses, these little letterpress actual presses, and so that they could make those things at home. So that was a super creative solution. The theater classes, acting classes, many of those students went, rather than do a monologue live in front of their class, they would film themselves. And then the theater department utilized a software that would break down that film, and the faculty could insert critiques along the way. And the students really found that to be super helpful, right? Because as opposed to doing a monologue, waiting till the end, or doing a scene, the professor watches along with the class and then gives comments, the comments on the acting can become much more surgical, because you're inserting them, in a video for the students to watch. They can keep that. So that was a really interesting discovery. I loved seeing the Glee Club outside my office window in the fall. Dr. Jeremy Jones, who's our amazing Glee Club director, broke the Glee Club into these small groups that would all sing with their masks on outside. And then Jeremy would just ride his bike from on campus from one group to the other. And we wheeled pianos into the courtyard outside for opera rehearsal. And, we tried as much as we could to not miss a beat. And I think in many ways, it was very successful. Although, of course, we missed life the way it was, for sure. John, talk about the Fringe Festival. That was a really cool thing.
Well, yeah, this was a takeaway for me. The theater department, again, with lots of collaborating partners, moved their creative content, their productions online. And what's happened with that sort of thing is, all of a sudden, I mean, where it might have been difficult for me or others to see a play, whatever, dance performance, whatever we had, I could do that on my own time. And I would imagine many of you have discovered that as well. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We have a student advisory group, and their feedback is they love this. They had probably more license to create content on their own. It was kind of, let's solve the problem. And certainly one of the things we're learning is COVID is really driving the need for creative content. As it might be moving digitally, but we want a lot of it. We're all home watching Netflix, and our audiences are going up. So it's silver lining.
It was really the digital. So the theater department, hosted this digital Fringe Festival. I mean, kids wrote their own plays. They filmed these plays. There were dance pieces as part of it. There was a student professor team from the architecture department that created this beautiful film. There was this really interesting sort of, if you're a Cincinnati resident, sort of Blink-like sort of image mapping outside on buildings. John, help me out. What's the word I'm looking for?
You would ask me that. I'm not sure.
I know.
Yeah.
But it was a partnership between kids who were working in ETBD, in Emerging Tech and Business and Design, with a professor who's a specialist in entertainment design. And they were doing all this sort of visual image mapping on in Bishop Woods. Essentially, they created a poet's shack in Bishop Woods.
If any of you are familiar with the Blink Festival in Cincinnati, I think they do similar things in other cities, but large format projection on the buildings. And
exactly. Yeah, it was very cool, very creative. And I want to pause to say, of course we missed, I mean, we're talking about all the sort of things we learned and the way things went well during COVID, but I'm a theater person, right? There's no replacing being in a room with other humans, for sure. And we all really missed that, but and lamented that and felt that, students, faculty, staff. But we took that lemon and we tried to make some lemonade, and we think that that we really learned some things, which is really cool. And another great aspect of this, and I don't want to shortchange the visual arts, right? The art museum had both real exhibits, right? So you can go to the art museum today. You have to register online. You get a slot to make sure that there's social distancing, but you can physically go and see our exhibitions in our art museum. But then they also put everything online. So if you're not comfortable with that, you can visit the exhibitions online. They continue to have their programming, which would have normally been kind of a face-to-face lecture in the art museum's auditorium. They put that online virtually. One of the things that has also been a kind of COVID silver lining for us is how we all discovered that you can Zoom someone in, right? So rather than have to bring an alumni to campus to talk to our students about a career, for example, we've started Zooming in a lot of our alum. I'm sure many of you listening today have helped our students out, but that's been amazing, right? And John can talk more about the architecture lecture series and things, but I was really, really impressed because in one of the early lecture series that the Art Museum gave, which is typically, important architect or interior designer comes to Miami's campus, flies in, gives a lecture, works with students, talks with students. This is all now being done through Zoom, but it's allowing us to really bring visitors, quote unquote, visitors to campus to meet with our students who normally we wouldn't be able to bring to campus.
Yeah, we are bringing people to campus who either would not have come because they're too far away or too famous, or we couldn't have afforded.
Or in Europe, right?
Or whatever. And I just many times have said, why in the world weren't we doing this before? This will continue, and the students appreciate it. Our lecture series, I can speak to my home department, but all of a sudden it sort of opened the door to people we would not have had otherwise. And we might be looking at a mix in the future. But our attendees are doubling and tripling. People are requesting the lecture series links. We moved our career fair, our architecture and design and ETBD career fair to a virtual format this year. We just did that, waiting to do the decompress on that, but that may be kind of the new thing. I think the key thing is, I would underscore this, Miami really does a great job of delivering a personalized education and getting, having that kind of contact with students. And that has, from my perspective, has very much continued. We're still doing that, but it hadn't been bad. All in all, it hasn't been bad.
Yeah, and just again, a quick footnote to that. I mean, we've been having career panels. We call them the Impression Series. This is part of our big initiative in the college in the last several years, has been what we call the #Thriving Artists Initiative. And this is a very aggressive career readiness program. We're banning the term starving artists, and we've got a liaison in the career center, Michelle Vasky, who just works for us, right? So we have a staff member who's meeting with students from the very beginning and helping them throughout college. But we've been having these panels. So normally, to bring people from the East Coast, from the West Coast, maybe someone from Europe, to campus all at the same time to talk to students about careers would really be impossible, right? I mean, we might get one person or two people or more folks in the Midwest, right? But this has been a way that our students can really interact with alumni and guest artists who are perhaps too busy working in Hollywood to come to campus, or who have wonderful projects in an architecture studio in Ghana that normally would not be able to come to campus. So it's just been that's another glass of lemonade, right? That I hope will continue to drink, because that's been, I think, has been a really nice thing to offset the ways in which we've lost a lot of things too, for sure.
Well, we were going to talk a little bit about where we see things going in our college, and I might suggest that we just finish that up. I think we can do that kind of quickly. We're at about 40 minutes, so does that sound good? We can save us a few minutes for questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Please go ahead and finish up. One of the things on our list here to talk about had to do with where we see things going. And again, if 90% of the change in our academic division has happened sort of in the last 10% of the time, I think that's only accelerating. And I think a common theme, as we've talked about, has to do with more interdisciplinary partnering. We're seeing just a real push to better connect the arts with future careers. So learning how to apply music or theater or studio art or whatever it may be. And again, some of our majors lead more directly into professional careers, but a lot of them don't so much. So providing some of those core skill sets, certainly a trend, to connect with business. And by the way, the Farmer School of Business now offers a whole core in their foundation in creative thinking and creativity. So this isn't just us. This is happening kind of across the university. Liz talked about connections with health. We are building a brand new, I just took a look at this yesterday, a brand new large health building over near Campus Avenue on the west side of campus. New programs that are also growing like crazy. A second building to come online, I believe in 2022 is, Liz, I don't know what you call this, a STEM?
I think, it's the McVeigh Data Science Building, I think they're calling it.
Right, which will include our ETBD, but STEM and digital technology disciplines. Yeah. So the whole tech side, how the arts connect with technology. I mentioned earlier the idea of content creation, that our students can study the arts, not only to sort of, it's a both and, but not only to learn about, the arts that have happened, but also to be creative, to create content and share that content.
And I'll just interject here saying, John and I had a wonderful conversation with music alum a couple of weeks ago, and Andrea Johnson, who's a member of our advisory board and is also an agent of artists, had just signed some young tenors who made their career on TikTok. So that's what those kinds of things are what we're thinking about in terms of creating content for TikTok, for YouTube, for other forums.
And one of the ways I think we create content is to move to more kind of project-based applied types of courses. Liz and I had a fascinating meeting the other day with the dean of the engineering school who essentially asked us where we could identify courses or opportunities for the arts students to partner with the engineering students. And that may seem a little odd on the surface, but actually, if you look at it more closely, I mean, that is where the world is going, and we could give you lots of examples for that. That requires that we find opportunities in our curriculum, maybe at the upper levels, capstone levels, to be a little bit more flexible, to be more project-based, not just to partner outside our college with other schools and colleges on campus, but the trend is certainly to extend those partnerships to industry. How do we partner with outside companies, possibly with other universities? We have started a dialogue with the other arts deans around the state of Ohio. So the world is getting smaller, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a good way to put it, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Well, maybe we throw this out. For any questions,
I feel like we've been talking.
We've been talking for too long.
Right. Are there questions that alumni might have?
We do have some questions. So I'm going to kind of go in order in which you talked, and then the ones that sort of don't particularly fit in any one specific spot, I'll save those until last. I do have a question here. So you talked a lot about making lemonade out of the lemons, and sort of, having to use much more ingenuity with relationship to how things moved virtual. What kinds of things do you see sort of sticking around as far as virtual live stream events moving forward? You did touch on that a little bit, but can you maybe expand a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think John mentioned a hybrid course, and that's a course modality that means that there's some face-to-face component, but then there's some online component. And I think that, I mean, Miami is, our brand is a residential campus, and that is very important to us, and I think we're all eager to get back to that. But there's definitely, like I mentioned, with the software that helps actors, or the ways in which we can bring alumni and guest artists and guest architects, etc. To zoom in and provide expertise for our students. I think that's a big old yes and, to use an improv term. But I think that definitely that will continue. I mean, we have learned about more. We have more tools now to help our students than we had before, and I think that's a really exciting thing.
Liz, that's a good way to think of it. We have more tools. Certainly there are some people out there who, again, have a preconceived idea of what online learning is about, and all of a sudden, my kid is not having the Miami experience. Well, yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think if the intent is to, a pandemic permitting, return to campus in the fall, sort of as the way we know it, I think we also have to be open to what we can add. The alumni career panels, the critiquers who can come in, the lecturers who can come in, and the ability to occasionally meet with the class the same way I'm looking at you guys right now. Right.
Or if a student is, is home, right? I mean, here's something that we never would have thought of before, right? Say a student goes home for spring break and is having a problem with a project they're working on, right? Now they might have thought to call us before or something, but that's hard if there's a visual component, right? Now, I don't think anybody would think anything of a student saying, hey, Professor Mullenix, can you hop on Zoom and just take a quick look at this scene design I'm looking at? And I mean, they wouldn't ask me that because I'm a theater historian, but I mean, we had, again, another tool. I think it's really,
I had a student last week who was making a drive back from Chicago down to Oxford. And the initial assumption was, sorry, I'm going to be on the road. And I'm like, we'll see you during class.
I know.
Make sure your roommate is driving, please. But I can't tell you. I mean, I think everybody listening probably knows what this is like. You know, we can dial in from anywhere, and we just have to be more flexible and go with it.
Yeah. So here's another really good example. Like we have these amazing programs in Luxembourg, right? This architecture studio is really is a wonderful thing, right? Because for architecture students to study abroad, it's been hard for them to do it in the semester. This is very much like many of our professional degree programs, right? Because it's an 8-semester curriculum. It's pretty, there's a lot of credit hours required because they're pre-professional. But for our students now that can go to Lux in a fall semester and study architecture, we were having faculty from Oxford having to fly to Luxembourg, you know, to do a critique every once in a while. Now that can all be done through Zoom. So that is just, you know, which is a wonderful cost saving too. There's just, lots of good discoveries.
Absolutely. I love that you call them tools. And I found particularly exciting how you were describing the inserting your critiques directly and calling it sort of surgical. I think that's a resource that students would continue to really find valuable. Okay, so sort of on a related pandemic note, is there any federal legislation that you're tracking or aware of that would address specifically relief for the arts?
Absolutely. They're so small, like theater companies have benefited from the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPE program. There's also PPE loans that have to do with shuttered venues, right? So if you're a theater company or a musical organization that has had to shut down, there's been federal help there. There's also great websites for artists that they can go to see, you know, that are freelancers, right? Because so many artists are freelance professionals, right? But they can go to there's websites, resource page. Different states are different too, right? Some states are providing a lot of relief money for artists, and others are not. But there is definitely ways that they have been able to be helped through this. But you know, for those of you who read the New York Times, I mean, there was just an article last week about actors who are belong to Actors Equity or SAG, that to get your health benefits, you have to clock in so many hours, right? And so, and they're not getting that work right now. So despite the creative workarounds that theaters are doing. So there's still, but yes, the answer to that question is yes, though there have been some federal monies that theater company that I sorry to talk so much about theater, but because that is my discipline. But yeah, I mean, yeah, John, do you know? I mean, I would think the same thing would be true.
No, it's the same thing across the board. It's, you know, hurt the architectural interior design professions. But maybe not so much, you know, because we've moved virtually in an easier way. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see. I have one specifically about the music department. Do you have any specific updates related to music? I have an alum here who's just curious about the most recent happenings in the Department of Music. If you have any specific updates you'd like to provide for him.
Yeah, you know, they've continued to kind of do the impossible, right? Students are continuing to have recitals. For the most part, those are live, face to face, but we have very limited capacity for people coming into the recital hall. But everything this year has now been live streamed as well, right? So most of our ensemble performances are being live streamed. Most of our recitals are also I think they're all being live streamed. So that has been wonderful. And miraculously, the orchestra, the marching band, the glee club, our sort of large ensembles have continued to work. We're hoping that all of that is back to the sort of the after times look like the before times in terms of what the fall will be like in terms of the ensembles actually getting together. We do have a lot of retirements this spring in the music department. So we're doing searches right now, and we're sad to say goodbye to some of our colleagues, but we're excited about the future for sure.
I think for me, music more than, I was going to say, I think for me, music more than any of our departments I would have expected would have struggled through this, and amazingly, I don't think they have.
Yeah, and they did do a lot of they tried to still do face-to-face, right? So if a student was taking an applied lesson, so that's a one-to-one with the faculty and the student, if they played a stringed instrument, for example, they could wear a mask and social distance from the faculty member. I know with some of our voice studios, students would sing through their mask, and the faculty would wear a mask and a face shield and sort of either teach outside or in a bigger space. We did a lot of that, right? So we moved things out of smaller classrooms into large spaces where we could open windows, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, music department, yeah, they've done an incredible job. I have to give a shout out to their amazing leader, Chris Tanner, who's the chair of a percussionist and the chair of the music department. He has done a wonderful job. But yeah, marching band, everything's back to sort of the new normal in the fall, et cetera. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. Okay. So I have a couple comments coming in, couple questions as well. One that just came in, how are you working on sort of the diversity and inclusion initiative work within your department?
Yeah. I should have talked about that. So one of the things that we're working on now in the division is strategic planning. Miami has got a new strategic plan, Miami Rise, and each division is creating strategic plans for their division. But one of the things that we did this summer was in response to the Black Lives Matter movement and the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, we put together a social justice task force that was that had a lot of students on it, faculty and staff and alumni actually, and that task force worked through the summer and the fall to create a strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion just for the division. And that, to my knowledge, is the first strategic plan for DE&I that the division has had. So that task force has now morphed into a permanent standing committee within the college, within our sort of divisional governance. And they're just putting the finishing touches on that. And then it's going to go up on the website for all to see, to hold us accountable. And we are going to execute the goals and the action steps in that strategic plan over the next 5 years. And it's exciting. It's important work. You know, we have honestly not done enough in the past, and we really need to do a lot better than we have done. We also had this is such a cool thing, sponsored by the Performing Arts Series. The Performing Arts Series is working with several artists, some in California, some in New York, on what they're calling the Black Art Initiative. And those artists did an artist-led anti-racism workshop with any faculty or staff member in the College of Creative Arts who wanted to attend in January, and that was amazing. And those artists, we sort of have them on retainer. They're sort of working with us all semester, so they're going into classes. If faculty really felt had a significant experience in the anti-racism workshop, they're doing sort of mini workshops. So yeah, I mean, we have always done, our programming has always been very diverse, right? So I think we've always reflected a kind of world arts, a world stage in our programming, but we haven't engaged in the active work of anti-racism, and now we're doing that, and that is, I think that's really important.
Excellent. Thank you for answering that. Let's see. We're quickly running out of time. I just want to mention a couple comments. We have a retired physician who was watching. He said he was quite interested in what the arts can do for health and overall healthful living. He says very exciting and helpful. And thank you for sharing that information. We also have somebody who John pointed out that she firmly believes and gives a big thumbs up to the personalized education you mentioned. She said that she really thinks Miami has the best teaching professors, which is just so valuable to undergraduates and graduates alike. So I just wanted to let you know that you've got some good support out there. And we are right about at the time we have for the day. I am so excited that you could join us today. Thank you both, Liz and John. We just want to let the viewers know that you can catch a recording of this webinar when it's posted in its entirety later this afternoon. Again, that is all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us. And I do want to point out before I go, because I think I would be remiss if I didn't, the conversation that Liz had with Hollywood art director Bill Bresky, which is available for our audience to view under the Winter College tab on our ALC website. Really exciting content there. Great conversation that you were able to have with him, Liz, again, spotlighting the capacity to have people join us that we might not always get the opportunity to have join us. So just wanted to point folks in that direction. And again, you can check out our other webinar presentations at alumlc.org/MiamiOH. You can also view that Bill Bresky presentation there. Thanks to you both for joining us and for our audience for viewing today. We appreciate you. Love and honor to you all. Have a great
love and honor. Thanks,
Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.